We have talked about it a number of times with top line college football coaches. It is not good enough with the amount of money that's being thrown at these guys. It is not enough just to be decent, just to be okay. There are coaches that have achieved much more than Jimbo Fisher at a particular stop. I'm thinking of Les Miles. I'm thinking of Mark Richt in particular because of the way he conducted himself, even off the field, to supplement the winning on the field. And it still was not good enough. People would ask me at the time, should Mark Richt have been fired? Should Les Miles have been fired? And we can fill in the blank on some other guys that achieved and won on a regular basis at their particular jobs. And I said, you know what? They're doing a good job. They are delivering wins. They're really good at what they do. However, let's understand the standard. When you are being paid among the top 5 to 10 in the country at what you do, you should be elite. And therefore, the benefit to one of these jobs is that you make a ridiculous amount of money. The downside is that you can't be like you or me in everyday life and just be decent at your job, good enough to maintain a job. You have to excel. And Jimbo Fisher has been given more than ample time to excel. And is he failing? Well, by most standards, no, he's not failing. They're not a horrible football team. It's not a bad football program. But by the standards based on the money involved and the aspirations, the expectations they had when they hired him, I bet we could go back to the introductory news conference when Jimbo Fisher was hired and the championships and that type of talk that was thrown around surrounding his hire. That's why he was hired. He's not delivered, so he has failed. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. And if you've been watching us and here in the Voice of College Football community for a number of years, you know when there is a major story in college football, and in this particular case, a firing of a major college football coach, Mark Richt, Willie Taggart, Les Miles, Mark D'Antonio, fill in the blank, Gus Malzahn, Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, all of those coaching transitions, we jump online as soon as we can to deliver our perspective and obviously talk to you. That's what it's all about, talking to you about this. And I have said this a number of times, not just this season, but going back to last football season. You can actually search the channel for Jimbo Fisher, and I've cut a number of videos. And actually the most popular video I have ever produced and posted to the channel, unfortunately, has been taken down because there was a hack that got in on the channel, a despicable person who unfortunately took down that, and I'm still working with YouTube, but that was about a year ago. That was after the Appalachian State loss that I posted that video, got about 70,000 views. Unfortunately, it got hacked, and that was taken down. But basically, my line to anyone who would say, you know, the money's too much, the buyout's too much, think of this. We have seen Paul Chryst at Wisconsin being paid a lot less money, still being paid handsomely, but being paid a lot less money, making $4 or $5 million a year with a buyout of about $21 million a year. And I believe Wisconsin negotiated that down to $16 million. And then think about this situation at Auburn. They are currently paying off 2 coaches at the same time. They're still paying, I believe, Gus Malzahn from the firing in 2020 after the 2020 season. That was only 3 seasons ago, not even. And then Brian Harsin, after just 2 years there, paying off his contract. They're in over $37 million per year, or $37 million total in paying off Harsin and Malzahn. And you may say, Mark, that's not $75 million. Auburn money and Wisconsin money is not Texas money. And when I say Texas, I mean the state of Texas. I mean the boosters. I don't mean the University of Texas, Texas A&M we're talking about, of course, but I'm talking about the boosters, the supporters, the fundraisers, everyone involved, the politicians, everybody in Texas that loves Texas A&M football. Deep, deep pockets in Texas. Jimbo Fisher won a national championship at Florida State. He could not deliver anything close to that at Texas A&M. Did a lot of good things. There were a lot of good signs, most notably in recruiting more than anything else. But he is not delivering Kevin Sumlin winning percentage. Has not come anywhere close to winning the SEC Western Division. Not really. Their best season was during the 2020 COVID year. 9-1, 8-1 in the regular season. Got blasted by 4 touchdowns against Alabama. An all-time great Alabama team, granted, but not even close. And they didn't play a tough schedule that year. So I have been saying for 2 years, Jimbo Fisher is about to get fired. And I didn't have any inside intel, no sources, no inside sources. I just thought, you know what? Rabid fan base, deep, deep pockets, a lot of pride, a lot of investment in this happening. And it's been, we have seen coaches get fired after 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years. Jimbo Fisher, 2018, 2023, 6th season. Yes, 6th season at Texas A&M. And he has done nothing. He's done nothing, accomplished nothing. He's won some games, beat a number 1 Alabama team at home. That was a good night. That was a really nice effort. And actually, I was looking at his record just the other day against top 5 teams, top 10 teams, top 15 and 20 teams in light of what happened to James Franklin again against the top 5 team on Saturday. Jimbo Fisher's record against ranked teams and against highly ranked teams is not necessarily as bad as you would think it would be, considering he's won like 60% of his games. This season, 6-4. That's pretty much what he's done. He has gone 7-5, 8-4. That has been his average season. Appreciate all you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will talk about Jimbo Fisher's stay at Texas A&M. Maybe there are some defendants of Jimbo Fisher, possibly. I'm certainly willing to hear that because I'm a patient man by nature, I think. Not by nature. I don't think any of us are patient by nature, but I try to be a patient person. But time had run out. Time had run out. It is not working. It did not work. Jimbo Fisher is an overrated coach. Does that mean he's not a good coach? Does not mean he's not a good coach. He's an overrated coach. There is something about national championship equaling, okay, these guys are the best. No, they're not necessarily the best just because they won a national championship, especially if it's one. If it's one, it can be lightning, Jameis Winston, in a bottle. And Jimbo Fisher, surrounding that national championship season, had a good run at Florida State. But other people can win at Florida State. Now he goes to Texas A&M. They have not won a conference championship since 1998, and he did not deliver. I have left the link in the chat if you want to give me a call. Also, keep in mind that the link is in the description section of the video. Let's get to the Pete Thamel story from ESPN. Of course, Texas A&M and everybody else in college football is 2 weeks left. Texas A&M at 6-4. Ironically, this firing comes after an impressive, although Mississippi State is down, down, down. This is the worst Mississippi State team we've seen pre-Dan Mullen, maybe early in Dan Mullen's career. Basically, during that transition from Sylvester Croom to Dan Mullen, that's how bad Mississippi State is. So 51-10, nice little win for Texas A&M, but that should not in any way change an outcome of this magnitude. All right, Pete Thamel, ESPN story. We always want to attribute where we're getting this information, probably. And also in terms of the buyout at $76 million, I got to think that they can negotiate that down. Maybe, maybe not. Texas A&M informed Jimbo Fisher on Sunday morning he will be fired. Sources told ESPN. Fisher will be paid the remaining $76 million on his deal. Oh, man. I don't want to make you feel bad on this Sunday afternoon. Hopefully a nice, bright, perfectly blue sky Sunday morning wherever you are. But can you imagine being bad at your job? Jimbo Fisher's not bad at his job, but not succeeding at your job. He did not succeed his job and getting $76 million to say goodbye. Could you imagine? $76 million, according to sources, a record amount for a buyout for a head coach. That figure more than doubles the highest known buyout ever paid to a fired college football coach. Associate head coach Elijah Robinson expected to serve as the Aggies' interim coach, sources said. Steps toward removing Fisher began in a Texas A&M Board of Regents meeting Thursday. A 4-hour discussion about Fisher's future led to the imminent decision. Anytime I hear about these board meetings, whether it's at the collegiate level or if we take it to the NFL level, player personnel offices, general manager offices, would love to hear those meetings, would love to be privy to those discussions, would love to hear the pros and cons and the back and forth and the discussion about Jimbo, the money, the record. Texas Ags first reported the school's plan to fire Fisher. Tex Ags, we've had them on here a number of times. Texas A&M 6-4, 4-3, coming off a 51-10 win over Mississippi State. Jimbo Fisher 45-25, nice record. If he's at Kansas, awesome. Give him an extension. If he's at Duke, speaking of which, Mike Elko, are you listening? If he's at Duke, great, 45-25. If he's at Minnesota, PJ Fleck, that's about what his record is. And falling, but 45-25. That's nice. Nice little record at certain stops. Not there. Not under these conditions. Not at that salary. Now, this is what is mind-boggling to me. We're going to get to it right now. He had signed a new 10-year contract with $95 million guaranteed in 2021. That deal was given in part because of the potential at the time of Fisher leaving for LSU. You know what? Bye. I did not understand that at the time. I was on here saying the same thing at that point. At that point, 2021, and I don't remember if that was prior to the 21 season or after the 21 season, but you know what? You've been here for 18, 19, 20, 21. You've been here for 4 years. We see no signs of this getting any better, except the recruiting ranking looks great. Everybody's happy in the offseason. But you know what? Bye. They extend his contract to 10 years. I could liken that to Alex Rodriguez. Like at the end of his career, the Yankees should have been done with him. He's at the tail end of his career. He's a shadow of the player he used to be, and they extended him like another 5 years at that ridiculous amount of money. What is wrong with these people? And the Yankee fans didn't even like him. All right, let's take this call. We got DeReal MVP showing up today. DeReal, what's going on?
Well, Mark, I mean, this was inevitable news, but I just want to talk about the job itself. To me, this is one of the top 10 jobs in all of college football. Where do you think this job ranks?
That's a great question. That is a great question. Well, historically, it doesn't rank anywhere close to that, but the here and now is that you've got SEC status, and I think we saw that when Kevin Sumlin had the job, when they moved from the Big 12 to the SEC, and how much that boosted recruiting and boosted the perception of the program and boosted the expectations. And people look at Texas A&M differently now than they did 15 years ago. So SEC, new TV contract with the SEC, Texas recruiting. Oh my goodness. 100,000+ people in the stands. They will go to all lengths to work on recruiting, resources, facilities, everything that you could possibly want. Now, it's not Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Historically, of course, it's nowhere close to that. I would say it's in the lower end of the top 10 if you take everything into consideration.
I would completely agree with that. And Mark, I know this is crazy to say because of how bad they are, but if they get a phenomenal head coach, they could win the SEC next year, Mark.
They could. You're right.
And with that being said, do you think they should go after somebody who can recruit really well, or do you think they're going to do the opposite approach and just go for somebody who is kind of weaker on the recruiting front but's an excellent head coach? Do you think they'll overcompensate for this mistake they've made?
Programs typically do that. I think that's a good thought right there. I do think that there's a basis for that. Now, whether programs mistakenly do that and overcompensate, we'd have to go through the examples. But I do think that programs typically say, we went with a young hotshot coach and it didn't work out. So now we're going to go with a more stable guy, a guy that's been around, even if it's not a sexy hire or whatever. They tend to fluctuate to the other end of the spectrum. What I would want to know in the administration is if we hire someone who's not known for recruiting. Dan Mullen. Not that Dan Mullen's a candidate. Not that I would want Dan Mullen to be my head coach at Texas A&M. Not that he's not a good head coach, but I don't think he's the guy to do the job here. Then you want some kind of guarantee that he is bringing on offensive and defensive coordinators that are stud recruiters, and that there's some kind of plan to supplement that lack of recruiting chops out of a Dan Mullen, Brian Kelly, although we've got less evidence with Brian Kelly that he's really that poor of a recruiter. That's more reputation. So just like if you're going to hire Mario Cristobal and he's the recruiting guru, but not necessarily a genius when it comes to X's and O's, then you want to make sure that he's going to understand that, not be full of himself and have a big head thinking he can do everything and that he knows everything and he's strong at everything, and say, no, this is the reason we hired you, and we're giving you one of the best jobs in America and a ton of money. But you know what your blind spot is? You're not a great X's and O's guy. So your offensive and defensive coordinators have to be excellent because you are a recruiter. Whatever that is, they have to then reinforce the staff, especially the coordinators, to be strong in that other area.
Agree, Mark. Completely agree. Now, I'm seeing some early names being floated out there, Dan Lanning being the most prominent one. I'm seeing Jeff Brom being thrown out there as well. What do you think about some potential names?
The first two names I thought of, and I did not do an exhaustive thought process on this. I was actually out and about and got a text about it and thought, okay, well, that's not a big surprise. Let's head home and jump online. So I thought Lance Leipold, Kansas, and I thought Mike Elko was just the defensive coordinator there a couple seasons ago, and look at what he's doing at Duke. So those are the first two names I thought of. Jeff Brom. I think I have no issue with Jeff Brom. Of course, he's not been at Louisville long enough to know if he's going to recruit extremely well. Of course, Purdue's the type school that nobody's going to recruit highly ranked classes there. So I don't know if I don't think that was his issue. But at Louisville, he's obviously, he elevated Purdue from, and I don't want to give him too much credit because anybody that was competent would have lifted that program. It was so bad. But he lifted it beyond what a lot of people would. Louisville, he makes an immediate impact. So I think he's an excellent hire. And who was your other?
Dan Lanning.
Oh, Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning's more of a personality, and I'm not saying that to denounce his head coaching in any way, but he's more of a uh, he's more of a personality to, and if that means something to them in terms of interacting with the media, having a little swag, a little, he's going to call out opponents, and I'm not meaning in any kind of unprofessional, classless way, but he's got a little mojo about him. And so if that's important for them, then I think that that's something that they are going to have to just consider. He's a personality. You're getting a personality. So you either deem that as a positive or a distraction, possibly. Dan Lanning obviously took over a good program from Mario Cristobal. You don't need a program builder. You need somebody who's going to coach the team better. He doesn't have to go out there and convince people to come on board and convince recruits. He just has to be able to develop the players better, put together better schemes, and coach better in the game. And so, yeah, I like Dan Lanning as well, although his track record's a little thin. He has yet to really, and I know this may sound crazy to some people because they're thinking Oregon's contending for a playoff spot. Yeah, it's a 10 game in his second season. It's a 10 game resume into his second season. So I'm not completely sold on Lanning being a great head coach, but it would be, I certainly would not bash that hire by any stretch because he's doing the job.
Okay, Mark, that's all I got for you. Fight on to 1939.
DeReal. I love the send off, the final greeting there from DeReal. He always puts a spin on it. Very nice. 1939, of course, the only Texas A&M national championship team. Now, we should probably, here at the Voice of College Football, review that national championship season to make sure that it's legit. We only, this past offseason, made it through, I think, the 1980s. I think we made it back to 1980. If you're unaware, we review the national championship seasons because, as you well know, many of them are flawed, seriously flawed. So we'll have to review. We'll get to that 1939 championship. Texas A&M may have 0. All right, let's finish this article, see if we've got anything else here. I don't believe we do. There's really not a lot here. And certainly we'll take your coaching candidates there in the chat. Just everything we know. Won the Orange Bowl, finished number 4 in the AP rankings in 2020. Since then, Texas A&M's gone 19-15. If we look at Jimbo Fisher's record, let's review the career at Texas A&M here. So this is what we're looking at. So he replaces Kevin Sumlin, of course. And Sumlin, I know that there was a running tally of Sumlin versus Fisher, and people kept track of that. And I know it's extremely close. And with Jimbo's 5-7 last year and 6-4 thus far this season, I believe he's falling behind Kevin Sumlin because Kevin Sumlin basically went 8-5 every year. After Johnny Manziel, he basically went 8-5. The Johnny Manziel years were good to him right out of the gate. Kevin Sumlin comes in from Houston. Now, you talk about a guy that has fallen from grace. He was a hotshot at Houston. He had a 13-1 year, a conference championship season, beat Penn State in a bowl game. He was the next big thing. He gets Johnny Manziel. They take off that year, Heisman Trophy, beat Bama, win the Cotton Bowl, finish like 5th or 6th in the nation, 11-2. First season in the SEC. Played a ridiculously difficult schedule, navigated that. The next year, not as good, but still 9-4, won the Peach Bowl. And then after that, 8-5, 8-5, 8-5, and a lot of really good starts because of bad non-conference schedules to those Kevin Sumlin seasons, but they get into the SEC, they lose games. And so that would have been 2012 and 13 were the Johnny Manziel years, then 14, 15, 16, 17. And yeah, He basically went 8-5 almost all those seasons without going through each season. So that is what Jimbo Fisher has replaced. And basically, he's just copied it. And not even that, because Kevin Sumlin certainly did not have a 5-7 season. And to have a 5-7 season, 2-6 in the SEC, 5 years into the tenure, that's alarming. It's one thing for Mario Cristobal to go 5-7 year number one at Miami, but 5-7, 5 years into it. So that first year, 2018, they go 9-4. That was the team that played a really good game against Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant when they were battling for the job and when Dabo Swinney was making that switch, but it was the second or third game of the season at Kyle Field, and they took Clemson down to the wire, the eventual national champion 15-0 Clemson team. And they had a nice little season there at 9-4, finished number 16 in the country, won the Gator Bowl, 2018 Gator Bowl. I believe that was Louisville they beat in the Gator Bowl. Then they come around in 2019 and things were supposed to take off. There was a lot of hope after that first season because they take Clemson to the wire, 5-3 in the SEC, especially in 2018. That's pretty damn good, especially in the SEC Western Division. You finish in the top 16 in the country. And then 2019 didn't go as well with a 7-5 regular season. But that was kind of expected. And another portion of all of this to be considered, and Christopher, we'll get to your call in 2 seconds. Another portion of this would be offensive system development, because this is Jimbo Fisher's calling card, but he's supposed to develop quarterbacks. And I heard a stat the other day that Jimbo Fisher, and I didn't go back to verify this, but so I'll just take it verbatim. Jimbo Fisher has only had 2 wide receivers drafted at Florida State and at Texas A&M. Chris, if you want to call us back, we'll take it right now. I did not realize that was who I thought it was. I just saw a name there. Didn't realize that was our guy, Chris Frazier from Spear Addicts. So, Chris, if you want to jump back on, I'm going to text him right now. All right. Yeah. So anyway, to continue on this path, then came that 2020 season. And keep in mind, they can only win against the teams that they're playing. Of course, they can only play the teams that they play. So I don't want to downgrade this 9-1 season, especially since you would have thought that it was actually a more difficult schedule than typical because they played a complete SEC schedule, of course, in the COVID year. But they had a nice win against a good Florida team who went to the SEC championship game. They only played one other team with a winning record that year. They beat a 6-5 Auburn team. That was their only other win against a quote unquote team with a winning record. And then, of course, 2021, the high point was the win against Alabama when they were number 1, went to the national championship game. But that was the high water mark. And Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher has been messing around with the likes of Auburn and Mississippi State and Arkansas for wins in the SEC. Look at this. We got Chris Frazier on the line from Spear Addicts.
How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty well. I apologize for not taking your call. I just saw that there was a call. I didn't read the name on it, or I would have jumped on your call right away. But this is a pleasure, folks, because Chris covers Florida State football. If you're not aware of Spear Addicts, you need to be. It's right here on YouTube. So Spear Addicts right here on YouTube helps us on our Florida State live show every Wednesday. And of course, has a lot of knowledge concerning Jimbo Fisher. So, Chris, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, James Coleman and I were talking about this about 2 weeks ago. And I apologize for my voice. Completely hoarse after this game that we just played.
Yeah, mine's shot too, but I can imagine. At least you made it through.
Oh, yeah, we made it through. But But we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago that I didn't care what he did for the rest of the season. They were gonna get rid of Jimbo regardless because of where he's just. You don't see any growth inside. It doesn't seem to be getting better because they made an offensive coordinator hire. It's just kind of same season in and out every year. But I'm going to talk about a coach that I think Texas A&M is going to get, not go after, but get. Um, I think they can get him very quick, and I also think that he's affordable to their aspects because he's in a little bit of trouble. And his only thing that's wrong with him is the university that he coaches for doesn't put the money in recruiting that Texas A&M obviously can. Don't have the resources that Texas A&M has, and I know they might not be a huge fan of it, and some Texas A&M fans might not be, but it would be very dangerous for college football because I think that the man's got one of the greatest offensive minds in the game, and that's just my opinion. But I've also seen a lot of players explain to me why he is what he is and how smart he is as far as that the offense goes. And I'll drop the name, but it's Lane Kiffin. And right now he's in a little bit of trouble with Ole Miss. I think they're already trying to find an exit plan from him based on the scrutiny that he's getting from how he treated a player. And I think Texas A&M is about the only school that can save that name. They can fix it. They'll take a little bit of the ridicule or whatever back. They don't really care because they want to win and they want to win right now. And the talent that Texas A&M's got, their biggest shot at keeping that talent in and not mostly entering the transfer portal is bringing in a guy that most kids love. He is hard on them, but a lot of kids like that coaching. You're going to find one here or there that don't, and that's what happened at Ole Miss. But I think that's who they get, and I don't think a lot of people are dropping his name. I don't think you go after Dan Lanning. Oregon's lost, Willie Taggart to Florida State. A couple years later, Mario Cristobal to Miami. They're getting kind of tired of losing folks. So I don't know if they're going to just let someone go, especially when Dan Lanning's doing better than both of those previous coaches. So to me, there's other names out there that are good, but Texas A&M's flashy. They want to win. That is what they want, and I think that that's the most dangerous man that they can go with, other than someone like an Urban Meyer. But I don't know how realistic Urban Meyer is. That's all I got.
Hey, Chris, as soon as you started going down that path, I thought within about 3 words, I thought, yes, Lane Kiffin, because I think a lot of people tend to think of guys that are just kind of available. And we think of Lane Kiffin as, well, he's got this job and he's doing well. But yes, he has had that controversy jump up on him in the last month. And yes, wow. I am sure, considering the politics in Texas, I'm not talking about Republican, Democrat. I'm just talking about infighting in terms of how much people get involved in Texas into the college football more so than other states. That there would be a heck of a battle about Lane Kiffin because he's a polarizing guy. Some people love him, some people hate him. And I'm sure it would not come as a hire like a consensus. Everybody's on board. We're hiring this guy because everybody loves him. It would be, wow, one faction won over the other, that this is the guy that we need to get.
Well, like I tell our fans, when we had a bunch of fans question us hiring Mike Norvell. The thing that I was explaining to them was like Tony Pollard. You getting to talk to Tony a lot. It gave me an understanding on what matters in coaching, what matters to the players, what the players look for. Not so much the fan base, not so much the head ups, just the players. If you want to win football games, you got to get the players, and I don't mean get the best ones. I mean get them to play their best for you.
Yeah.
Now, when you can capably get the best and play the best for you, there's a guy like Lane Kiffin. I think Lincoln Riley does good offensively. Don't know what's wrong with him. Defensively, I know they got rid of their defensive coordinator down there, but has USC ever had a great defense? No, but they've had a good enough one to win a national title. So I don't know what that looks like as far as that goes. But I love the Mike Elko name drop. I think that one's fine. I think Mike Elko's done a phenomenal job at Duke, but is Mike Elko the name that can get those players to come there? No, he's just a very good developer. he's not going to get you the 5 stars that you're going to want right away, and that might put you in the hindrance of being able to win what you want to win. So the names that people are going to look for when you get rid of a Jimbo Fisher, regardless of what he hasn't done, when you get rid of a name that big in college football, it's not much less than some of the biggest coaches right now. It's like if Georgia decided to separate from Kirby Smart, which they won't, but if he gets into a situation where he's not winning anymore, when Kirby Smart leaves or it's his end of his time at Georgia, people are going to be like, well, who's the next guy? How do you put the shoes in that? Nick Saban goes to leave. Who's that guy? And if you don't get Lane Kiffin now, or you don't get the Dan Lanning now, Alabama will. And when it's time for them to get that big name, they got the money. So Texas A&M is not gonna. The 75 million's a month of barrels, man. Let's just be honest. They're just not gonna go to the $12,000 plate food that night. Or that month. They're gonna go to $5,000 a night, so we can recoup some of that money we spent off of our month of barrels that we've got for this school. It's not as big as people think it is. Plus, it's going to be a payout system. That school is going to be fine. They've got the money to hire whoever they want. So I'm just ready to see who it is. But I felt like once Lane Kiffin's thing popped up and it gained nature, that gave Texas A&M a timeline. Let's pull the trigger and let's pull it now so that everybody knows that we're coming. And then whoever that is, we'll get them.
That's a great thought, Chris. I appreciate you jumping on board with us. And I know everybody's speculating about the future, and you gave us some, a great path there in terms of the possibility there. But because of your history, your connections, your insider status with Florida State, I'm curious just your thoughts about Jimbo Fisher, because anytime a coach has a national championship on his resume, we tend to start with those coaches and just say, well, they're in this other category. And then we look at everybody else and rank them. But that doesn't necessarily, especially when you only have one, you could have caught lightning in a bottle. So I think he's a good coach. Do you think he was a better coach, number one, 10 years ago? Or was he always this guy and just he caught the right team, the right recruiting, the right quarterback, and all of that at Florida State?
Well, to be completely honest with you, Jimbo Fisher has always been a better recruiter than he has a head coach. But his problem is, and most offensive mind coaches, this is not just Jimbo, this is around the faculty. That's why your best head coach is not a play caller. Your best head coach, and this is only opinionated by me, your best head coach is a CEO who makes sure everyone's doing their job at their best, gets the best out of each and every one of them. And the reason that I say that is because when the game evolves into what everybody else is running, this new scheme, this new offense, this new defense, whatever it is, those guys that are those play callers of the past, where it was a pro style or whatever we were running X amount of years ago, and they don't want to evolve, they're just fighting it. That's Jimbo's biggest problem. He fights the inevitable. It's evolved. You have to move on. Nick Saban did not want to evolve, but he did it for the betterment of not only his legacy but for Alabama football to win. And Jimbo has that ego that doesn't allow him to do so. Now Nick Saban luckily was not that big play caller guy. Now he's defensive. That's what he knows. And they're not as big of egotistical maniacs as, and I'm not trying to be no kind of way. I think you have to be narcissistic as hell to be a coach. I'm
Mhm.
honest to God. So I get it. But to be an offensive minded guy, like if you look at your best offensive minds in the game of college football, Lane Kiffin, how egotistical do we think he is? Lincoln Riley, how egotistical is he? Jimbo Fisher, how egotistical is he? Like if we really talk about it, they are egotistical maniacs. That's what they are. But that's because they're really good at what they do. Now Jimbo's problem is he was 10 years ago. That offense works. That is something of the new. And unfortunately, he let time pass him. And unfortunately, he did not evolve with time. And they waited too long to get a real offensive coordinator. And they gave Jimbo the reins. They let him have it because they felt like he earned it. And I understand that. But sometimes when you are running a college of the status of Texas A&M, you got to pull the reins in. And you should have done it 4 years ago and said it's time to get an offensive coordinator. This is not working. And it's people not knowing the game of football, but knowing the market. And you got people that are above us in the corporate world that cannot do your job, don't know your job, but they'll tell you everything you don't know what to do, and they can tell you how to do your job. And that's funny because all they see is the numbers. So that's what the problem is in most organizations. That's why I think at Florida State, hiring Michael Alford has done such a good job because he understands the game of football, not just the numbers. Now he's great with the numbers, but I think that this is a fall on Texas A&M, not Jimbo Fisher alone. He doesn't stand alone in this because as soon as they pushed him to get an offensive coordinator, he went and did it. He understood it meant his job, so he goes and tries it, and they gave it 1 year, less than a year before you fire him. It's hysterical how fast you can do things in not the greatest ways because you have enough money to. So I think it's bad that you do it during the season. I know it's close to the end, but be classic and wait till the end of the season and then you do it. But the only reason you don't do that is because you found a coach that is not available, realistically, as far as they don't have a job or, they're at their end of their contract. You're looking at somebody that's got a thing that just popped up. And before that news dies down or Mississippi or Ole Miss does a good job of trying to cover it up, it's time to go after that guy. So that's the reason why I think it's Lane Kiffin. And I could be completely wrong. I don't care if I'm wrong because it's Texas A&M. And I tried to tell him that it wasn't going to work because he was not going to change. It didn't matter what players he got. So, statistically or by the numbers, it states that he's gotten the greatest class of all in all college football a couple of years ago or last year, whatever it was. He couldn't do it. He did it with the 2013 Florida State team, but supposedly that class was head and shoulders above that one. So I don't know, but I don't think Jimbo coaches for a little while. I think he ends up the Dan Mullen route and ends up in a studio somewhere talking football and making millions while he's getting paid millions from the school. I mean, he's not coming out of this in a bad way. Nobody looks at him like he's a bad coach now. He's just not an elite coach. He's not at the top of the list, but he's still a good coach. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a job a couple more years, or maybe a year down the road, someone calls him up and gives him a job. But I think he goes in the studios, gets a couple million a year to talk this game because he knows it so well. And I mean, he's fine. So we'll see where he decides to move to because I don't think he stays there.
Yeah, like you say, Lane Kiffin, one of the premier offensive minds in college football, and considering Ole Miss has its recruiting limitations for an SEC school, they're still a top 25 recruiter. That what I've been impressed with Lane Kiffin is that he recognized that he was one of those guys that a lot of people criticized, like a Lincoln Riley as well. He doesn't care about defense. No, he's just not. That's not his area of expertise. But if you look at their last two recruiting classes, they majored on defense. Like he put his attention toward the defense. So he cares and he wants to win. What's kind of interesting is obviously he and Jimbo had that back and forth last offseason about him talking about NIL and that, we don't have the kind of money at Ole Miss and they've got all the money and whatever the exact comments were that Lane Kiffin could be that guy with all the NIL money that he was complaining about last offseason.
Well, I think what Lane Kiffin was trying to do wasn't so much as throw shade at Texas A&M, but it was trying to get boosters on his side on as far as Ole Miss goes. Because I mean, we got to be really honest, man. Like Ole Miss is not a poor school. I get that it's in the state of Mississippi. I get all of that, but that school has done very well in that state as far as money goes. They've got some of the most high-end boosters. I mean, if you look at the Michael Orr story, those people own Taco Bell, KFC all over the country. That's just one. That's not to name the thousands of others that are boosters at that school. And the problem is because Lane is egotistical, he has a problem getting boosters to pin over that money. So they keep wanting to win. And at a point, Lane's got to feel like he's getting held back because people don't agree with his method or don't agree with him being an elite coach. And I think he's proven that to them with lesser talent. Not that they have terrible talent. It's just they don't have four and 5 stars at every position, and they don't reload. They have to rebuild every year that they lose players, and he's fed up with it. I think I would be if I'm a coach of his stature and can win the games that I have. He's one of the only coaches that beats, one of the only assistants other than Kirby, and Lane did it first. Lane beat his guy. Alabama, that's the whole big deal. Like, he pulled it off before it was popular to do so. And to me, it means a lot. Not even Jimbo could do it in 2014 or whatever year we played him. And he had a good team. It wasn't great, but it was good. So Lane's got that the top of most. Dan hasn't beat him yet either. So to me, you look at Lane Kiffin, and no, did they just get, completely ran out of the stadium by Georgia? That's the difference in recruiting. That's what I'm saying. You've got good players. They have elite players. He can't get elite players at Ole Miss. You put him at Texas, Texas A&M, Florida State, Miami, any of those schools, that guy's going to be a problem. And he's going to be a problem for a long time because he's still young. So that's who I think you should get. Now, if they don't, somebody else will. And hopefully it's someone that can. I want to see what the man can do, even if it is against my school. I just want to know what he can do, because I think he's that good of a coach to get there, and he can pull the right guys as far as coaches, as far as mentors, all of that. I think he can create a dynasty with where he goes. And maybe I'm putting too much stock into him, but I just know that I get to talk to players, and players say that the most that they've learned in 10 minutes of their life is talking to him about offense. And then they realize, I don't know what I thought I knew. And that comes from some of the greatest minds. Even there's a great quarterback, that comes back to Ole Miss every once in a while. And he's won 2 Super Bowls. um, Eli Manning said that this is one of the most amazing offensive minds that he has ever spoke to, that he learned more in an hour conversation with Lane than he did almost any coach in his career. Now, that's something to say, because you had Coughlin, you had some big names over you at one point in time.
Yep.
So to say that Lane Kiffin was the guy, and that wasn't just to knock, hey, we got a good coach at Ole Miss. That wasn't what he was doing. He was back to see if this guy is that guy. That was the first time he ever met him, first time they ever spoke, and he was like, wow, I heard Lane was good, but this is different. And I don't know. I think that they should give the guy a shot regardless. I know that it seems a little bit sour the way he treated the player. But look, man, that's hard coaching. That's how I was coached. I loved it personally. It drove me. Anger made me play better. Someone telling me I was not good enough every day of my life made me better every day of my life. And it has worked for the majority of college football history. It has made greats. It has made some of the best men in this world today because of how hard another man was on them. So I know it's not the popular opinion nowadays that we should be able to mental health and all of that. And I understand that people can get pushed too far. And there is a certain level. There's a fine line. Don't push people too far. But I don't think that was too far. I kind of respect what he said to him. I was like, well, what's so bad about this? And I'm like, oh, wait, we're in cancel culture. We're in the whole new age. So we'll see what happens, Mark. But I appreciate you taking my call. I'm traveling to Nashville, hopefully to hit you and James and some other guys up and let y'all know that this deal's done so we can move on to bigger, better things.
That is a good word from you, Chris. I appreciate all that you're doing. I hope you know that, Chris. For you just to show up every Wednesday, I know if you miss, it's because something major is going on, because every other week you're there, you're delivering for us. So thank you for that and everything else that you're helping us with here at the Voice of College Football. And if there's anything I can do for you, man, just let me know.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm going to get some pictures of this Barstool place and see what's going on. I'm gonna see what this is all about, because everybody's saying that everybody that I've talked to that say they know what they know. Damn it, I just broke news and I didn't mean to. But I don't really care anymore. I really don't. But yeah, I'm supposed to be learning what it is that this whole big thing's about. I had McManus, is that? I think that's right. I think I say his name right. He's got a radio show and a podcast and a video show that he does with different podcasts around and different sports guys. He brings on a lot of former players, and they hit me up on LinkedIn of all places, and want me on their show, and they want me to come into the studio and all this other stuff. And it really confuses me, because I think I might have opinions. I think that I might speak clearly enough, but for all these people to want my opinion on different schools other than just my own, it I didn't think it was all this possible this quick. I'm only, what is this, my third year in, and it's only my second year of being on any type of show. So it is what it is, and I appreciate all the opportunities, and especially being on the voice of college football. And that's not butterment. That's the truth. I know what you did when you were at ESPN. I know what you've done to grow this. Um, so mutual respect. I don't think I've done near as much as you in this industry, but I appreciate the respect, and I will continue to push for those that keep fighting this good fight for the ones out here that we do it on our own, man. Like we don't have a huge backing. We do this for the love of the game. We do it for the love of the people, and that's what we're here for. But I appreciate you for having me on.
Well, Chris, anybody that heard you talk about Jimbo Fisher and talk about Lane Kiffin and talk about the situation surrounding Texas A&M and what they should do, it's not hard to figure out why you're getting those kind of offers. So appreciate you being here delivering like that.
Absolutely, Mark. Y'all have a good one, and go Noles.
Chris Frazier, Spear Addicts. It is easy to find right here on YouTube. Spear Addicts, right here on YouTube. Does a phenomenal job. Chris joins us every Wednesday night at 6 Eastern at the Voice of College Football on the Florida State show. And then also keep in mind that he goes live every Monday and Thursday at 7 Eastern on Spear Addicts. So you heard the obvious insight, knowledge. He's got connections. And so please join Chris. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We'll take our next call, but let's keep a running list of candidates here. This is what I've gathered thus far. Lane Kiffin, Lance Leipold, Mike Elko, Jeff Brom, Dan Lanning, Urban Meyer. I've not gone online, looked up anybody else's opinions. That's basically what I came together with, what Chris just brought in that phone call. We had to Real MVP offer up a few people. And Urban Meyer is always going to be the guy that's thrown out there when it's this big of a job. And Texas A&M, in my estimation, is one of the very few places that would have the kind of money and clout and recruiting prowess to get an Urban Meyer, because I believe Urban Meyer, and I'm not saying that Urban Meyer is going to be their number one candidate. I do not say that Urban Meyer's looking to get another job. I don't know that for sure. I'm sure that he wants to. I'm almost positive Urban Meyer, if he is completely healthy and can get the right job, wants to be a head coach. He is too young and has accomplished too much and has too much of a burning fire to dominate and be a winner and win championships. You can't go through what he did at Florida and Ohio State, and of course, prior to that at Utah and Bowling Green, and not in his mid-50s. You know, the guy won 3 national championships before he was 50 years old. And Texas A&M is one of the few places that can say, look at our recruiting, our facilities, our resources. People bring up Michigan State. I don't see Urban Meyer going to Michigan State because they're just not quite at the cut that he has basically earned by the 2 stops that he had and won national championships. All right. We thought we had a call, but that person has dropped off. If you want to call back, please do. Any other candidates out there that anybody's considering? I'm not giving it much thought, but let me, if Jonathan Smith was not so tied to Oregon State, but sometimes you got to make difficult decisions in life. And with the demise of the Pac-12, I got to think that Jonathan Smith, unless he is very much resigned to, and not in a negative way resigned to, but different people have different priorities. And he obviously is a great football coach. He wants to win. He's built a great thing at Oregon State. So it's going to be a decision whether this is my alma mater, this is where I'm raising my family, this is where they want to be, this is where I want to be. And regardless of what happens, hey, coaching at Oregon State in the Mountain West and making $5 million a year is not the worst deal in the world. But if he wants to aspire to win championships, then maybe a Jonathan Smith decides to move on. Elsewhere in the Pac-12, if Dion was more proven, maybe Dion in 3 years, 5 years. But obviously, the magic fairy dust has worn off in the last couple months, and that's no knock on Dion. It was just that the schedule was set up in such a way that they got off to a great start, and it's remarkable what he's put together. Them just playing a good, really good Arizona team down to the final play of the game last night is testament that they are still fighting. They're still playing. They're still a good team that has a lot of holes. Obviously, they're not a physically dominant team. They're very much a smattering of talent and speed and concept. They're a very interesting team. They're basically what USC was the season before Lincoln Riley got there. USC had top 5 to 10 recruiting classes, but not a lot of those guys, but some of those guys transferred. Plus, they had a lack of development. They had a lack of a strong, solid strength and conditioning program. And they were just a weak, flimsy team that had NFL players in spots sprinkled in among the lack of depth and the lack of development. They had NFL players even in that 4-8 USC season. So Colorado is pretty much like in that spot right now. And of course, moving to the Big 12. So somebody commented in here that Deion Sanders is not going to Texas A&M. I did not say that he is. I'm saying that just look out for a couple of years from now. That kind of move for Deion could be possible. So I'm going to add Jonathan Smith to our list. Anyone else? I don't know that Jedd Fisch is the name hire that they're looking for at Texas A&M, but Jedd Fisch is doing a heck of a job at Arizona. Really good offensive mind. Just listen to the guy talk. You can tell that he connects with people. And that's one of the big reasons why he's achieved so much in such a little time at Arizona and walked into what was most likely the worst Power 5 football program after what Rich Rod did to it. And mostly the deterioration continued under Kevin Sumlin. That was just a dumpster fire at Arizona, and Jedd Fisch has done a great job, but I don't know that he's going to command the kind of attention and name that Texas A&M is looking for. I do think that is part of the hire. They can get both. They can get anybody who sizes up their job to be not on the level of Texas A&M. They should be able to go grab. Let's see, anybody in the SEC in addition to Lane Kiffin? Eli Drinkwitz, I would put him in a sense in the Jedd Fisch category. I don't think that he's heavy enough for the job. Don't think that that's going to happen. Also, Eli Drinkwitz did not impress me his first 4 or 5 years at Missouri. Now he's coming through with he's had a nice recruiting class. He's had a nice recruiting run, considering that Missouri's typically second to last to Vandy in the SEC in recruiting. He has certainly pulled through with better recruiting classes and top end guys that he's pulled in at Missouri that have not been the standard for Missouri football. So Eli Drinkwitz has stepped up his game this past season, and we obviously see it on the field as well. And this is even before really those recruiting wins are setting in, because that's really just happened here in the last recruiting cycle or two for Eli Drinkwitz. So I'm going to add Jonathan Smith to the list. Our call-in link is in the chat. I can drop it in there again because it's about 1,000 comments buried, but it's also in the description section of the video. So please join us there. This is all delaying my top 25 that actually makes sense. Oh, no. That's not what I wanted. There we go. I got to copy the link. Forgot that I had copied something else since then. So the link is now in the chat. And again, it's also in the description section of the video. Thanks, John. Appreciate you dropping that. Also, in the chat, we're simulcasting on our SEC channel that we launched at the beginning of the season. We've got about 350 subs. We want to get that to 1,000 quickly. So the SEC channel link is in the description section of the video. So please grab it. And if you, of course, want to follow the SEC, you should be joining us there, because I have about 5 or 6 records posted each and every week from key games and key matchups and key teams in the SEC. But also, in addition to that, if you just believe in what we're doing here at the Voice of College Football, even if you don't like the SEC, grab the link, subscribe, please. And then when we get safely over 1,000 subs, go ahead and unsubscribe. But let's get to 1,000 subs on the SEC channel. The links in the description section. Let's see. Let's comb through the Big 12. I put Lance Leipold. There we go. Hookem247 is saying Lance Leipold. He was the first guy out of my mouth, in addition to Mike Elko. Man, I think Mike Elko is so good. Man, he is good. Just think about what Mike Elko is achieving right now at Duke. Duke right now has gone from being the worst team, worst roster, worst program in the ACC, and they're playing on a NC State, Miami level. That's where they're playing right now. I know they lost this game to North Carolina, but even consider that. The recruiting status of those two programs, count up the 4 and 5 stars on the North Carolina roster under Mac Brown. They've been recruiting in the top 15 to 20 versus what Mike Elko inherited from David Cutcliffe, who had kind of grown stale there, had a nice run. David Cutcliffe at one point. It's funny that Chris brings up Eli Manning. Of course, he gained a lot of his quarterbacking chops and tutelage under David Cutcliffe. And both he and Peyton and David Cutcliffe did a remarkable job for a time at Duke, but that had grown stale. And Mike Elko took over a team at Duke that this is just phenomenal. Each time I express this, I can't believe it. I got to let it soak in. Duke had lost 17 of 18 ACC games when Mike Elko went there. They were 1-17, and most of those were not pretty losses. Those were not like they were competitive. They're losing these games by 30, 35 points. 1-17. And then if you would look at the roster that he inherited, he hasn't even been able to change this program with recruiting yet. He's only had one recruiting cycle, and their impact on this current team has been minimal because they're only freshmen, of course. And my goodness, now I got to credit David Cutcliffe because he did actually finish with a couple decent recruiting classes for Duke standards. But Mike Elko took a team that went 1-17, its previous 18 ACC games, and immediately made them competitive to where they didn't lose a game by more than one score last year. We saw how they competed against Florida State. Sure, it wasn't a pretty fourth quarter, but they competed for 3 quarters and lost their starting quarterback. We saw them beat Clemson by 3 touchdowns. We saw them last night on the road at North Carolina take Drake May and North Carolina and superior talent to an overtime game. They won a bowl game last year. They went 9-4. Let's see. I think they dropped to 6-4 with this loss last night. But I don't care if they lose their last 2 games of the season and finish 6-6. Mike Elko, in my book, is he's a top 5 to 10 coach in the country based on sample size of what we've seen to date. He doesn't have the resume yet, of course. And especially for a guy that's never done it as a head coach. Crazy. All right. Let's see. As we comb through the Big 12, I mentioned Leipold. Mike Gundy's a really good coach, but no, I think he is set. He's Oklahoma State through and through. He's done a remarkable job turning this team around, although we saw the big letdown yesterday. I would think, having been around the block a few times, that Mike Gundy would have prepared his team for that kind of letdown. and UCF is not really a good football team. But I don't see him going anywhere, and I don't see Texas A&M going for Mike Gundy. And elsewhere in the Big 12, outside of the obvious, Steve Sarkisian's not leaving Texas for Texas A&M, nor do they. He's not really proven yet either. So nothing left in the Big 12. Of course, Brent Venables is locked in at Oklahoma. And of course, those two schools are going to the SEC next year. Anyone else in the SEC? I brought up Eli Drinkwitz. Of course, Josh Heupel off to a good start at Tennessee, although they got smashed yesterday and not a great season this year. Arkansas, I'm guessing, may be the next opening that we see. I know the players love Sam Pittman. It was a really good story leaving Georgia as an offensive line coach, going to Arkansas, turning them around momentarily, but it's been a rough 2 years at Arkansas. I don't know that he's going to be around for long. Anyone else in the ACC? Again, previous caller mentioned Jeff Brom. I think that's an interesting choice. Don't see anyone in the guy that's brought up out of the Big Ten, anytime these big jobs open, there are two guys that are brought up. And one, the shine is coming off very quickly, despite actually fielding some of his better teams here the last 2 years. And of course, that's James Franklin. And James Franklin right now is not necessarily the most popular guy in college football, following another disappointment against one of the big two in the Big Ten. So I know that, let's say I'm guessing that the Texas A&M brass, even if they thought James Franklin was a really good coach, even if they thought that, they would not want the perception of, we're bringing in a guy that basically has the same track record to a certain degree as the guy we just fired, that he can't win big games against the top teams. Although James Franklin's bowl record in New Year's Six bowl games is extremely good, but he's had an Ohio State issue since he showed up, and now it's become a Michigan issue as well. The other name out of the Big Ten is, of course, PJ Fleck. Now, like James Franklin, a lot of shine has come off of PJ Fleck. Somebody in the chat is likening James Franklin to Mark Richt. Actually, I don't think James Franklin is the coach Mark Richt is or was 10 or 15 years ago. I'm not going to go through that explanation right now. PJ Fleck, yes, doing what he's doing right now at Minnesota with his worst team since he's been there. I don't think he's in a position to make that move. I don't think that if he was on a hot streak, if this was at the end of 2019 or even the last two seasons going 9-4 at Minnesota, then maybe. I think that has definitely cooled in regards to his candidacy. Matt Campbell having a nice bounce back season at Iowa State. He's now 7-3. I know they won big last night. I'm trying to think if that moved them to 7-3. More importantly, they're 5-2, and they are tied for second place to go to the Big 12 championship game. And so Matt Campbell, after being a remarkable builder of a program there at Iowa State, had this down couple seasons that kind of took him off the radar. But again, I don't know. I'll put Matt Campbell in a sense in that bucket with Elko and Fish as not being quite the name that's going to really spark the fan base, spark the boosters and the supporters. More importantly, the financial supporters that they're going to back a hire like that. I don't think that they're going to be too excited about Matt Campbell, although he's really good. All right, folks, people in the chat asking about Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn, he had one tremendous splash at Auburn when he first got there. And he's an offensive mind. So that would be a plus in his favor. Because I think this administration and this athletic department has to think we can recruit, regardless of who we get, we can recruit defense. Defensive players are typically going to go, not that they're not making choices about development, because they are, but in terms of scheme, yes, there are good and bad fits for particular players, especially if you're talking about, like, is this guy an edge rusher or is he a drop back outside linebacker, and a particular player maybe having a thought as to, yeah, I don't want to play for this guy on the defensive side because that's going to take away from what I do well or what I see myself as being. But there's a lot less of that on defense than there is on offense, where I believe that recruits are much more critical as to offensive fit. And so if you're Texas A&M and you hire an offensive minded coach like a Lane Kiffin or some of the other guys that we've mentioned, Jeff Brom, I believe the defense, not that you can just let it go, it's going to take care of itself. You hire a strong defensive coordinator. You throw a ton of money at one of the best out there, whether that's Jim Leonard or whomever it is, and you get a top defensive coordinator. I think that the offensive perception is a bit more important. Texas A&M, again, based on everything I just said, is going to be able to recruit and sign defense, but to be able to convince recruits that this is an offense that is going to showcase your skills and get you to the NFL. So I had heard this the other day. I mentioned this a few minutes ago before we took Chris's call, that I had heard that Jimbo Fisher, in all of his time at Texas A&M and at Florida State, has only had 2 wide receivers drafted. Now, when we see what's happening at Ohio State, and we see what's happening and has happened in places like Clemson over the last 10 years, Alabama over the last 10 years, Ohio State over the last 10 years, those being the 3 prominent wide receiver schools during that time. Am I missing anyone? Not really. Oklahoma, from a depth standpoint, CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, they've had some really good ones, but really it's Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, but really those top 3, they'll have 2 guys get drafted in one draft class. Jimbo Fisher, I'm going to look this up. We got it right here. Florida State NFL draft history, and then we'll look at Texas A&M. So his Florida State run started in 2011 or 12. So he wouldn't even be responsible for that draft class. And Landfound, we'll take your call. Let's do that right now. Landfound, what's going on today? Welcome to the Voice of College Football, sir.
I'm growing increasingly frustrated with this traffic in Miami. On a Sunday afternoon, coming from Oklahoma City, there's no traffic there, especially on a Sunday. Gosh.
Wait, you're traveling from Oklahoma City to Miami? That sounds like a massive drive.
I've done it a couple of times before.
Good
It's
Lord.
not
What
that
is
big
that,
of a deal.
20 hours? 25?
20, more like 25. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Little social and emotional intelligence goes a long way, because I'm like, okay, I can't blame other people. I can't be mad at them for being on the road on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm like, and I catch myself, I'm like, wait a second here.
one of our guys in the chat here, Moose, wants to know if you're on I-75.
No, but I think I used I-75 to get to Miami when I got in the state of Florida.
Well, just be safe out there.
Thank you. Hey, if I could be a fly on the wall in that meeting when they called Jimbo Fisher onto the carpet, because if I think I know Jimbo like I think I do, you know, he might have said something. Ego's got in the way. Jimbo's personality comes out, and he gave him a piece of his mind. You think an exchange of words got him fired?
No.
Like that was it? Like he said, you know, Jimbo, or at least I think I know Jimbo. Jimbo said something. They're like, all right, Jimbo. All right, man. We're done.
So I think that's an interesting take that you have. And I think that's very insightful, but I just don't think, I doubt if that's the case. I doubt if they're making a rash judgment based on an argument to fire him. You know, they've been dealing with him for 7 years. And yeah, I think that they had their minds made up. It's not working. This is a 7th season. 7th season? Yeah, 7th season. 6th season. And no, I think that this has been determined.
Mark, I doubt they sat there and had their hands on their laps and talked it out. If I think I know Jimbo like I do.
Well,
by the way,
I'm not saying that you're wrong about the anger and the volatility and emotion and ego and all of that spilling over in the conversation. I'm just saying that they didn't just have an argument with the guy and decide to fire him.
Yeah. You mean not like Lane Kiffin did, right?
Well, yeah, that's it's interesting you bring him up because we had Chris Frazier here from Spear Addicts, and he believes that Texas A&M either should or will or both go after Lane Kiffin.
I listened to his take, you know. I thought he had some valid points. I could see where he was coming from, but I definitely disagreed with him on a couple of points. I can't remember off the top of my head because I was taking care of some things, but yeah, he had some takes. He was all right.
Okay. Why did you call, Landfound?
I'm sorry?
Why did you call?
Oh, I just wanted to get my I just wanted to talk some college football.
Absolutely. Fire away.
So, I mean, yeah. I'm just the game yesterday was pretty good. Did you see my tweet about the Miami Florida State that was the most pleasurable college football game I've seen all season?
I did not see your tweet. Sorry. I've not been monitoring your Twitter feed.
Mark, there's nothing. I mean, I think there really is nothing like Miami Florida State in college football. I think it is the best rivalry. Full disclosure, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan. Yeah, massive respect to Florida State. But my goodness, Miami Florida State's tough to beat, man.
Well, it's not the greatest rivalry, but it's up there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know what's another good? When I was living out there in Oklahoma, the Red River rivalries, the shootout, that's a pretty good one too.
Absolutely. They're both historic, amazing rivalries. Absolutely. I watched the Florida State-Miami game start to finish. Absolutely. I thought it was a great game.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great game. Absolutely.
What didn't it have? You had a true freshman backup quarterback who comes in a rivalry game of that magnitude, plays his heart out. The game was close the whole time, controversial calls. Then you bring in TVD at the end. I mean, the kid hurts his arm trying to get a first down, John Elway-esque. You see him reach his arm out, knowing that, hey, if I do this, something bad can happen, and he took one for the team. He's crying not only because of the pain and emotion involved, but because he wants to win so bad. 6'4", 220, stud. I mean, I hope he's back next season. I really do. And what happened with Lane Kiffin, and then what happened with Jim Harbaugh, I think Mario Cristobal's stock went way up, but way up after those two. After what happened in that situation.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What is the connection between Mario Cristobal and Jim Harbaugh and Lane Kiffin?
You spoke about factions in Texas. I thought that was a great point.
Okay.
About the Lane Kiffin hire. I thought that was a great point. I was part of the faction. I wanted Lane Kiffin at Miami.
Yes.
I would have given my right arm for Lane Kiffin at Miami. And I was not the only one.
I'm glad you didn't get your way and you still have your right arm, Land found myself.
Thank you.
I think that's much more useful than having Lane Kiffin as a head coach. But
thank you.
But I know that there were a lot of people on board with you.
Yeah. And I thought of something else and then I lost my train of thought. But or what we were talking about. Mario Cristobal now there's no more. I mean, what happened with Lane Kiffin, what just happened at Ole Miss. Now it's like, now for sure we don't want Lane Kiffin. So that we can get that out of our head. Even though the contract, even though it was never going to happen, now we can just completely take that out of our head. And then you've got a program, an up-and-coming program under Jim Harbaugh, who's a rival because it's college football. We want to be in the college football playoff as well. He goes down. Then you've got USC going down with the coach over there. I think the stock's up for Mario Cristobal and the University of Miami. And then we put on a performance like we did yesterday. We see what happens with TVD next year. Recruits come in. Look out.
Okay, so you're saying all this and sizing up these coaches for a recruiting angle.
Not only from a recruiting angle.
Yeah.
Not only. Let me digress because I'm getting a little bit excited here.
Well, let's digress to this point that there are some definite positives going on at Miami, but all of the programs that you just mentioned are in better shape than Miami currently.
Right, and I think that goes to my point, doesn't it?
Those programs are in better shape. I thought you were talking up Mario Cristobal and how all these other programs and coaches are having a rough time right now.
Well, yeah, they're in better shape, but those are major blows. What happened at those programs? That's going to hurt Ole Miss in the long run. I thought the caller before me, Frazier.
Yes,
he made some great points about Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. What he said that they're already probably having conversations.
Yep.
To see if they can replace him. And then Jim Harbaugh, they're saying he might sneak away to the NFL.
Yeah, well, that's a yearly thing with Harbaugh, number one. Number two, obviously, they're in the midst of this NCAA investigation, of which we're not going to find anything out about that, I don't think, for a long time. And they've already received their punishment for what we know to be.
Keep the black cloud. Keep the black cloud over Michigan. Yeah. It's only better for us.
Not that there's not any crossover in recruiting there, but Ole Miss and Michigan and USC aren't necessarily competing for much talent with Miami. I would be a little bit more concerned about Mike Norvell, number one, and to a much lesser extent, Billy Napier, but still Florida. So
these top programs aren't competing for the same top players?
oh, they are. But I don't know that there's a whole lot of overlap on a regular basis between the ones that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So you're
Hey,
happy with Miami and Mario Cristobal and where it's all headed.
Oh, this is exactly what we needed.
Okay.
This is exactly what we needed. Absolutely. Hey, what'd you think? I mean, I kind of know your thoughts already, but what'd you think about Emery?
Well, I think he was pressed into a difficult situation. So that was one thing that I was trying to process while I'm watching this game. And then when I see TVD come in, I thought, you know what? Let's understand that when TVD takes the field here, even though that's a tough spot to be in, where you got the pressure of trying to lead a touchdown drive in the final 2 minutes, he's got all these reps and rapport with these wide receivers. You know, Restrepo's his guy. Even Colby Young and Jacoby George, they have all those reps together. You know, you could tell on the first ball that he completed downfield, it was a 3rd and 12, and he connects with I think it was Jacoby George, that was a comeback route. It was a difficult route to complete, and because they had rapport, there was something there. So I kind of took back my criticism to a certain extent of Emory Williams, what he was showing, because 8 of 23 is obviously not going to get the job done, but he doesn't have the reps, he doesn't have the rapport, the game time, and all of that with that wide receiver core.
Right.
He protected the football. That's what he did that was the most important, that TVD has not been able to do. He protected the ball.
Right. And the kid knows football.
And he's
one of 7 brothers. It seems like the kid knows the game and he likes playing the game. So, I mean, you mentioned his numbers, and you mentioned that you watched the whole game. From what I saw from his throws, once he improves his accuracy and his confidence, I mean, hey.
Yeah, he's only a freshman.
And he's a true freshman, 19-year-old kid.
And he was playing in a big spot on the road against a major opponent. Yeah, he did fine. He did fine. He showed a lot of guts, obviously. And not just based on that last play. You know, he took some hits going for yardage downfield a number of times. He took some shots. So he gained a lot of respect from me.
Woo.
That doesn't mean he's a big-time quarterback down the road. I don't know.
Agreed.
I don't know.
Agreed.
All right, Landfound. Anything else?
No, sir. I will talk to you later.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Chris is calling back. Let's see what Chris has to say. Chris, what's going on?
Well, I want to retract a couple of things that I messed up on. One thing. I gave Lane Kiffin too much credit as far as beating Nick Saban, because that has not happened.
Yeah, I was going to say something, but I just thought I'd let that go. Yeah,
I give Lane. Yeah, I give Lane credit for some things Hugh Freeze did. I don't know why, because I don't keep with Ole Miss football.
Yeah, that was Hugh Freeze. You have 2014 and 15. Those two teams. Yep.
I want to. Here's the reason why I push for Lane Kiffin so hard, and that's because the guys that have played against him, for him, and it's what the players like. Man, I'm a players person, so whatever the players want or whatever the players like is what I'm going to push. That's first and foremost. And if you look, like, I wanted to add a coach to the list, and I forgot to say it when I called in the first time. I got hung up on some other stuff, but I got from a pretty good source, just moments after I hung up, because they were the ones that informed me that Lane wasn't who beat Nick, but everything else I was good on. But that same source told me that Hartline's a big player in the possibility of going to Texas A&M.
Oh, wow.
And that's wild to me, because he hasn't, to my knowledge, he has not been a head coach, right?
No,
He's only a wide receivers coach, position coach, correct?
he just became the offensive coordinator, but he's really not. He's not the play caller. They
Right.
just elevated him to, to reward him basically, and they've given him more responsibility, but he doesn't even call the plays. No.
Okay. Well, maybe they know something that I don't, and that be obvious. I don't know much about Ohio State football either. Besides that,
Well,
Ryan Day, if he doesn't beat, here's the thing: Harbaugh may or may not be the head football coach of Michigan in the next couple of years, because of whatever's going on, right? Or maybe for other reasons. But wouldn't it be wild if Michigan indeed does beat Ohio State this year? Ryan Day loses to him for, what would that be, 3 in a row?
Yeah.
Then Ohio State gets rid of Ryan Day because of that. I'm not saying they will. Just let's go with scenarios.
Okay.
They get rid of Ryan Day. Then Harbaugh gets fired because of all of his scrutinies. Now Michigan and Ohio State, two really big players, obviously in college football, are now both seeking out new head coaches. And now we're just playing the offseason game, because this is where I get most of my followers, is not during the season. It's the offseason when everybody's so bored out of their minds that they got to listen to football because they can't watch it. So my question to you is, what would be the next step if Texas A&M does take Heartline for whatever reason, and Ryan Day does end up getting let go for whatever reason, and Harbaugh does leave Michigan? What coaches are going to get what would be the best coach for Ohio State if Ryan Day was indeed not the head football coach anymore?
Well, I do think that for Ohio State to make that move, they would have to have really strong confidence that they could get somebody that they really, really want. And it would be less about, we're firing Ryan Day because we don't think he's doing the job, even though the guy's like 54-6. So we're not just firing him thinking, okay, then we'll figure out what we're going to do. They're going to have very strong indication that they're going to be able to replace him with who they want. So that's the first thing. Wow. After that, who in the world would they go after?
And while you ponder on it, I do want to make this known. I don't think Ryan Day should be fired at all. I think that it's crazy that some Ohio State fans say if he loses to Michigan again that he's getting fired. I don't think they know what they're talking about. But because of how many Ohio State fans write me asking me this exact question, is who would they go after? They don't say if we fire him, they say when we fire him, because he's going to lose to Michigan is what they keep telling me. It's the only thing they keep going to. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to beat Michigan. That's not what I'm saying. But what I don't understand is with a coach that has done as much as Ryan Day's done at Ohio State. Yes, he's fallen to Michigan 2 years in a row, and this could potentially be 3. But other than that, what has he done wrong? Like, he took Georgia to the line last year in the college football playoffs. That was technically your national championship game because of how TCU came out and played. But Ohio State played very well last year, and they made it all the way, unspeaking of what Michigan did or did not do. So you can't decipher a coach's career off of one team or one loss per year when you're in the Big Ten with the Big Two. I mean, Ohio State and Michigan are the Big Two. That's going to be a rival as long as both of them continue to be in the Big Ten. But I'm just confused because I don't understand, our fan base at Florida State. We had fans that wanted to get rid of Mike after his first year. They were ready. They get rid of it. Nope, we're going back to Willie Taggart's. Like, it's the same thing. And it was the farthest thing from the truth. But they were ready. They were ready for it to happen. Luckily, our administration was smart enough not to do so. But I don't know how much pull Ohio State fans have in the say-so of who the coach is. I don't think it's much, but I also don't know that to be facts. So that's the reason why I bring up the scenario, because I literally over this past weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend before, Ohio State fans were coming at me because I said, well, I think Battle's End and some others for not allowing Ohio State to poach Jordan Travis from us. Because whether people know that or not, they were highly after Jordan Travis in the offseason of last year. And so since then, since I've made that take, I've had a lot of Ohio State fans start following me. But that each of them that stayed following me keep asking me about Ryan Day and what I think they would do after that. And I don't have an answer for it because there's not too many coaches in the country right now that are doing a better job than Ryan Day and his staff, because here they are again in the mix for the college football playoffs. They've got a huge game coming up, at the end of the year against Michigan. But I don't know if a one-loss Ohio State team gets kicked out. Like, I really don't know. A rivalry game, Michigan ranked number 3, right below their number 1 status. Like, how far can you really fall when potentially the number 1 team in Michigan, you could consider them maybe being the number 1? How far do they really fall? I just think they switch places. Like, everybody thinks the big scenario is if Michigan beats Ohio State, or if Ohio State beats Michigan. Now, I believe that one. If Ohio State beats Michigan, I believe they're out. But that's just because of the scrutiny around Michigan for the signal stuff. But just wondering what your thoughts were on that, because I'm confused on why Ohio State fans would even want another head coach at this point.
So I know, Chris, being a Florida State guy for as long as you have been, and that the standard set by Bobby Bowden is extremely high, and there are championship aspirations, and I would never in any way detract what Florida State's accomplished in the last 40 years plus because of Bobby Bowden and what a great program it's been. And of course, for those 15 years that they were finishing in the top 4, they were arguably the standard in college football. But I guess you would have to be around Ohio State for a while. You got to consider, number one, it's the best winning percentage in the history of college football. So what best winning percentage in the last 50 years, the last 20 years? These people, like Urban Meyer made this statement a couple of weeks ago. He said, I was handed a 2-line goal setting when I got the job by athletic director Gene Smith. He handed me a piece of paper or sent me a text or something that said, you need to accomplish 2 things: graduate your players, win every game. Ryan Day makes that statement probably every other news conference, like every other week, his weekly news conference. He'll make a statement when somebody says something about expectations or something. He'll make the statement, I know I got to win every game. I know I'm expected to win every game. Every game. He's gone 13-1, was the number 1 team in the country his first year. They lost an excruciatingly last-second game to Clemson in the playoff. Then he goes 7-1 and loses to Alabama in the national championship game. Then he has the audacity to go 11-2 and win the Rose Bowl and finish number 4 in the country. That's his worst season. 11-2, win the Rose Bowl, finish number 4 in the country. And then last year, like you say, anybody with half a brain that watched that game against Georgia knows that was the de facto national championship game. And if his kicker makes a 50-yard field goal, he's the national championship coach. And now he's 10-0 and number 1 in the country. And that guy's going to get fired. He would be the most successful coach in the history of college football that got fired. So I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a huge, if he loses to Michigan in 2 weeks, most Ohio State fans will say that he needs to go.
Well,
yes,
I will,
because that game means that much to Ohio State fans.
Right. And no, I completely understand. And I think that, I think that the expectations of what Ohio State asks of their head football coach obviously works, because that's the reason why you have the win percentage that it does over the history of college football. So, I mean, the expectations are fine. The only irritants to that is how much college football, to my eyes, how much college football has evolved with NIL in a short period of time. It's not as easy to get those top tier players at every position. Not that Ohio State doesn't. Just, I would say the quarterback play this year is ish. He's not done great. He's not done bad. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. But they're doing enough to win football games. Same way with Florida State. We're not blowing people out every weekend. We're doing enough to win football games. And I don't even want the answer to who I don't even want to know who we would go after if we decided to move on from Mike Norvell, because it makes as much sense to me as Ryan Day or Ohio State moving on from Ryan Day. And I don't think Mike's done near what Ryan Day's done to this point, but we're having a really good season. We had a 10-win season last year. He's definitely doing something. We will say that it's definitely noticeable compared to the previous years of this. But when you step in behind someone like an Urban Meyer, here's the problem. Like, Texas A&M think that they want Urban Meyer. You think that's what you want. He's going to get you one. I'll give you that. He's going to get you one. But when his graduating class graduates, he's gone. That's what he does, man. He did it at Florida. He's done it at Ohio State. That's what he does. He comes in, builds a team, or takes the team over, wins you one, and then looks at what's coming next, and he goes, nope. And I got a heart problem. I don't feel good. Whatever the case may be. Now, is Urban Meyer a phenomenal head football coach? Absolutely. I think the guy gives up on himself before anybody gives up on him. To be honest, I don't think he likes the scrutiny. I don't think he likes the media. I don't think he wants to deal with it. That's the only reason he doesn't continue on. I think that's the only reason he didn't continue on at Florida. It became unfun. It wasn't fun anymore to win. It was just an expectation. It was hard, especially being in the state of Florida when you play the teams that you play. But to the touch of what the gentleman that was on before me, first and foremost, I hope Emory Williams fully recovers. I hated to see the young man get hurt. But that team definitely came out and gave us their best game of the season, I think. I think that's the best I've seen Miami play as far as playing a actual opponent. Now, when you played Bethune-Cookman, you might have put up 40 or 50 points, but it was Bethune-Cookman. To his point of Mario Cristobal gaining a bunch of stock for still losing a football game, like we don't measure how close you get to winning, man. That's a moral victory. And I don't know if anyone realizes this. Whether you lose by 1 point at the last second or whether you win by 1 point at the last second, there is such a huge difference. It's a big difference in the world of college football, especially to the players, especially to the universities. It is a big difference. So did Mario Cristobal gain a bunch of stock because his guys played very well in a rivalry game against a team that they've lost to now, was that 3 years in a row? I don't think there's a bunch of stock gain in Mario Cristobal. I think there's more respect for the youth of that football team. I think that the youth that is on that football team, showing the talent that they have, has proven that they will fight till the bitter end. Now, coaching is the reason Miami lost that game. That game could have been closer. And to me, there were some bad play calls on Miami's side. They did not adjust at halftime like they should have. And if Emory wouldn't have came in and dumped a wild pass in because of our safety couldn't make the right angle on a hit, what I would tell my guys if I was coaching in that circumstance, and anytime that circumstance comes up and there's a bomb being thrown and you have the angle on the guy, blow that play up. I don't care if you get ejected. Don't allow that to happen. And some people may disagree and say that's not clean football, but we got to be honest with ourselves. It's winning at all. We got to win, and that's how everybody lives. We all might be upset with Michigan for cheating. I get it, but they're trying to win, and I think that whether you know someone's signals or not, you still got to line it up, and you got to be able to stop it. So I don't agree with stealing signals. I think it's beneath the sport, but I want you to steal my signals, steal my team's signals. I want to see you beat us. And teams have beaten Michigan since they've been doing this. So it's not like stealing signals gives you the credibility of winning every game. Now, there's definitely an advantage point, but it does not just fix all. You still got to line it up. You still got to play the ball game. And I think that now coaches are going to be more observant of if changing play signals every few weeks or something to that nature, and that's not a simple task, but you never know what can be done until you have to do it. So we'll see what happens moving forward with college football, but I'm excited that Florida State's 10-0 for now the second straight season. We've won 10 football games. I want to see how far we can go. I also want to know who can put a game up against Georgia. Up until this week, I thought that all of us had a shot, but the way they went and played Ole Miss, that team's catching on fire at the exact right time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's going to beat them. I don't know if we could beat them. I sure would love to give it a shot, but we might be seeing a three-peat, and I'm not a fan of seeing teams win 3 in a row. So everybody else has got to get our junk together, so to speak, because I don't want to see 4 or 5 straight from a Georgia team. So everybody else needs to get it together, whatever it takes. Still somebody signals, I don't care. Do something.
I hear you, Chris. I was having the same thoughts watching that game, and we've kind of seen it come together here. They rolled Kentucky. They had a big second half against Missouri. They've started to gain steam. And when I watched that game against Ole Miss last night, I was like, wow, I am watching the best team in the country right now. It was almost like all those NFL players that got drafted the last 2 NFL drafts were allowed to just come back and suit up and roll out another game like 21 or 22. They were on their game. Offensive line dominant, defense dominant, quarterback making all the right decisions. Shoot, the quarterback said, Carson Beck, to Holly Rowe after the game, when she said, "It doesn't even look like you've played a football game." He goes, "Yeah, I didn't even touch the ground. My jersey's completely clean." That was a heck of a performance.
That's what they call a statement, Mark.
Yeah.
That team made a heck of a statement, and they have over the past couple of weeks. Like you said, Kentucky rolled them. Great second half against Missouri, which is a very good football team.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw what they did to Tennessee. And I'm not saying Tennessee's great, but they're not terrible either. And what they just did to Ole Miss, which, I mean, I'm vouching for that guy to get a head coach job at A&M. But, it pains me to say it, but Georgia they've been waiting 40 long years, and they're trying to make up for it. They waited 40 really long years, and they're doing a really good job at making up for it. They've done something that not very many have done, and for any team, whoever it is, whenever it is, that knocks them off from repeating, they will be talked about for a very long time, because what Georgia has built in that machine that is just well oiled and it's just rolling. Yeah, I want to see what a team can do against that, because it looks unstoppable. And I want to know, how deep can these kids get? Like, how much grit do you really have? And I think we'll find out this year, because I don't think that Georgia can roll Ohio State or roll Michigan or even roll Florida State. I know that sounds wild to some, but I don't think they can roll us. But we're going to find out. I think we'll see the best game this year. I don't think they get it wrong, because TCU wasn't the right team to be in there, in my opinion. But I don't think they get it wrong this year. So I'm excited to see it. I know you got other people calling in. I just wanted to throw that I did have a source tell me that Heartline was actually being considered. So putting that out there, and I appreciate you again. Y'all have a good one.
Well, Chris, before we let you go, let's consider Kirby Smart, coordinator, never been a head coach when he got the Georgia job. Dabo Swinney, a wide receivers coach, never been a head coach. Ryan Day, never been a head coach. Lincoln Riley, never been a head coach before Oklahoma, was the offensive coordinator. So it's not unprecedented that a blue blood will say, yeah, we'll elevate a coordinator that's never been a head coach. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate Chris dropping by. Let's get to our last 2 calls. We got Daniel on the line. Daniel, thank you so much for your patience. How you doing today?
Hello, Mr. Rogers. You doing good?
Doing well. Doing well.
All
You've
right.
got some investment in this situation.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, like, in the past couple of years, what has, like, when you hear A&M football, what does that mean to you?
The last few years, what A&M football means to me is basically displacing Texas as the most underachieving, disappointing, failure to meet expectations, waste of resources and facilities in college
So
football.
that's the thing, right? Like they have everything they need to put a good team together. The facilities, I'd walk by there every day. I'm like, who doesn't want to play here? Like who doesn't? The background behind me went right before I graduated, the pond. That's where all the tailgates happen, and I was
Been there
just like,
once. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sorry to
I was.
interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're good, you're good. So right before I graduated, they were still building this facility or this pond behind me. And like in my mind, I was like, who doesn't want to be here? And like all of the 5-star recruits, our recruiting class, it was just one of those things where I was like, we have everything we need, but who can put this together in a way that exudes success in the playoff or in the season? Because it was kind of like felt like, okay, when we play Alabama, we're not we're not up there, but we could be with the right coach. And
Close.
yeah, well, that
Pretty
one
good
game
win.
when with Zach Calzada when he
Sure.
made the field goal, but as
Even
you
this year, you see how close they are. It's a one-score game. They had a lead in the second half.
and that's the thing, right? Like we can't close out these games, but maybe with the right coach, we could. And that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, who do you think could be that for us? Like our Nick Saban per se.
Yeah, so before I get to that, I will say that there is a difference between, because they have that kind of talent, they will tend to get up for Alabama and a few other games and show that they can, whether they win it or not. And of course, they typically lose, and everyone typically does to Alabama. But of course, they won that game in 21, that they can show when it all comes together. That's like when they, despite that horrendous season last year, when they put it together and played with some pride, last game against LSU, they wanted to win. They go out there and beat a team that's going to the SEC championship game the next week. But the elite teams go out there every week. This Texas A&M, they'll play a game like they did against Alabama 2 years ago, and then they lose to Arkansas, they lose to Mississippi State, they lose all these other games.
that was
So,
you know,
and I know
yeah,
it wasn't
and
Arkansas because they always play them early in the year, but I think they lost to Mississippi State like the next week. Um,
and I think the pressure is there because UT, like we're gonna play UT soon.
Yeah.
And like I know they feel it because they're like maybe a year away from making the playoff when they expand the seeding to 8 or 12, not to
12
is it
next year.
12? Yeah,
Yeah.
to 12. So I know the AD feels Mr. Ross York. I always have trouble pronouncing the last name, but there's pressure. Like if there wasn't ever pressure, now is like, what do we do? What can we do to be up there with UT? Because I know if we get blown out, that's gonna be a bad look. It just is like there's that rivalry, the facilities, the money coming in, the boosters. Like we can't just have the same result every year. It's even the fans feel it. I mean, I don't know if you use Twitter often, but there's Aggie fans that are very frustrated with the situation. And with Henderson at QB yesterday, I kind of felt like, all right, maybe we have something here, but I mean, we're gonna have to wait until next week to see.
We'll see. What you just hit on with the rivalry with Texas is a big deal because Texas A&M has squandered now 11 to 12 years of being in the SEC without Texas. So that's why, obviously, Texas A&M has been so adamant about voting against Texas and keeping them out of the SEC. Because look what happened. Even though they didn't take advantage, although the Johnny Manziel years were fun to watch, and they won more than they have since. Basically, you took what was this sleeping giant to a certain extent that never really won much of anything last conference championship in 98. And you move that to the SEC. And once that SEC logo goes on the shirt sleeve and you can recruit, you're right in the best recruiting state, arguably with Florida in the nation. And then you're playing in the SEC now. And the very top players, almost all of them, want to play meaningful games and be shown to be playing the LSUs and the Alabamas every week. Like if you're at Texas, if you're not playing Oklahoma, nobody's really tuning into the TCU game and the Oklahoma State game and the Kansas State game. Those are nice games, but so they gained a huge recruiting advantage once that happened. Plus, they put all their resources into it, and they've recruited well. They just haven't developed and won the games and put together the right scheme on offense and defense. So now Texas is moving into the SEC, and now they're back to being on equal footing. Or if you buy into tradition and legacy and history, Texas is here above Texas A&M. Sorry to say that, but that's just, the kind of the hierarchy of college football. And again, if you believe in long-term brand and legacy and all that. But in terms of, I don't know if you can see the screen, but we've been collecting names, or I have, of guys that could be candidates. Now, Urban Meyer, he's in a completely different category than the rest of those guys. He's just, you would risk baggage and risk all sorts of different things, but best winning percentage of all time, 3 national championships, you're just talking about completely proven winner. I don't know if they're thinking that direction. I don't know if he's thinking about coming back to coaching. Now, the rest of these guys, Lane Kiffin, I don't know if you heard the conversation about Lane Kiffin. We had our guy, Spear Addicts, Chris, called in, and he suggested Lane Kiffin, and he gave a lot of great reasons why Lane Kiffin would be a tremendous hire. He's having an issue right now with the treatment of a player at Ole Miss and how that's being received at Ole Miss. So they may be ready to part ways with him. And I think the reason he would be and Jeff Brom would be really good hires is because they're offensive minds and they're known for being elite offensive minds and play callers and developers. And I was making this point a few minutes ago. I don't know if you heard it, that a place like Texas A&M is always going to be able to get elite defensive talent.
For sure.
Unless you have just some complete horrible hire as a defensive coordinator, which you're not. So that's not going to be an issue. I think offensive players are more mindful of, meaning quarterbacks especially, but also running backs, wide receivers. What kind of offense do they run? Is it a fit for me? Is it going to showcase me for the NFL? Are they good at developing? I need to be developed. Is this guy, can he develop quarterbacks for the next, so you need that. And when I look at Jimbo Fisher, and I just checked this, he has not produced an NFL wide receiver at Texas A&M. That's unheard of. That's unbelievable.
I mean,
we could go to every other school in the SEC. They've produced, probably except for Vandy, produced wide receivers in the NFL in the last 7 years. I
think it comes down to never being able to hit on that QB position, because it kind of seems like with Kellen Mond, it was always like kind of dicey. He was there, but he was just there. That was the thing. He was just there.
He was a good player. He was decent, and he might still even be carrying a clipboard in the NFL somewhere.
No, yeah, I think he was with the Browns
okay.
But as far as wide receivers go, you're right. I mean, he's never really produced any wide receiver that's been well known in the NFL. Ever since the Manziel era with Evans, I mean, I can't recall any other the one from the Cardinals, I forgot his name, but I mean,
yeah, I know Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, besides that, but I mean, there's got to be some change, and I think this is the right step to do it. And I do think Lane Kiffin is something that stands out for me as far as a new head coach goes. Or, I mean, Urban Meyer, it's tough to use the locker room, right? Especially in the NFL.
Yeah.
These are grown men we're talking about. They have salaries, and it's just, I think he's better suited for college football. I don't know if that's how you feel about it, but
that's really the mark against him, in terms of what he's accomplished. It's top 5 in the history of college football. You know, he's got the best winning percentage. He's got 3 national championships. Went to Florida, boom. He went to Utah. Shoot, you can take it all the way back to Bowling Green. Everywhere he's gone,
Yeah.
boom. He's turned it around immediately. But it's been 5 years since he's been on the sideline. And the thought that I'm having there is I'm not concerned with that he still doesn't, like, he's forgotten to run a program. It's that, do these players, what do they know him for now?
Yeah, that's the tough thing.
They're only 17 years old. They were 12 years old the last time he coached. They only know the name, and then shoot, social media. Yeah, he was a disaster in Jacksonville. So that's
you don't
one
think
thing against him.
You don't think that they would try to get anybody from the NFL? Just
yeah, my knowledge of, I used to be a big NFL guy. My knowledge of who would be a hot commodity in the NFL, I couldn't really come up
Mike
with
Tomlin?
any names. Oh, somebody like Mike Tomlin. Well, wow. The thing about NFL coaches is, once you've lived that life in the NFL, and not that there's not a ton of pressure and all of that, but they don't have to deal with recruiting, NIL, the NCAA, keeping track of players. You know,
grades.
NFL players will run amok once in a while and get caught for drugs or a handgun or whatever. You know, it happens, but you're dealing with men that generally have pulled it together by then, and you don't have too many issues. Keeping track of 105 guys that are 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Yes, grades, making sure they're still eligible. That's just a tough transition to make.
It makes sense. And, you know, one of those things that you mentioned earlier about tradition for Texas being over Texas A&M, you know, I'm kind of biased because I graduated from Texas A&M, but I would say that Texas A&M is a school of tradition more so than University of Texas. I think we have I think we just need that one coach, right? Just that one person to change things, the culture around here. Because with Jimbo, it kind of felt repetitive. The same things like, oh, we just got to work on it. We'll work on it in the offseason. Then we come back, we lose to some SEC teams, and it's the same thing over again. So I think that with the right coaching hire, with the AD, whatever he chooses, I think we'll be just fine in the future, because this was just, we need to set ourselves up for a good season next year, because we're going to be facing UT. So I think that's what everybody has circled on their calendars as an Aggie fan, because I mean, there's been so much trash talk throughout the years between those two schools, and it's just very frustrating as an Aggie fan to see our football team not succeeding while we have the sister school across the pond doing just fine. And I don't know about you, but I think this is much needed for this program.
Also, keep in mind, Daniel, that when you talk about Texas is doing just fine, they just arrived at this point. So
yeah,
it's been a long, long struggle for them as well.
No, yeah, I understand that, but you know, when they were doing that, though, you kind of felt the feeling that things were turning a certain direction. Like the direction was upwards, and for A&M, it's kind of been like a roller coaster of emotions throughout the years. Like no progress has been made per se. So I don't know if that's how you've seen it for UT. Like, you know, you said that UT hasn't always been like this, but through the years with Sam Ehlinger, with their bowl games, like it kind of always felt like they were just that one QB away. And then when Quinn Ewers transferred to UT and that game last year before he got injured against Alabama, I was watching that game. I think A&M was playing at that time, but I don't remember. But anyways, you just sort of saw the it factor in Quinn. And our QBs, I just never saw that.
All right, Daniel, we appreciate you calling. Call back anytime. Hope you get the coach of your choice.
We'll see, right? I mean, everything. We'll leave it at that. We'll see what Mr. York chooses, and we'll be happy with just that.
All right, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah,
you have a good day. Thanks for calling. All right, folks, we're going to take our next call. That would be Jackson's on the line. Before we do that, we will take Jackson's call here right after this in 45 seconds. Go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup. Go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter. All right, folks, we got Jackson on the line. Jackson, what's going on?
Not much. This was out of the blue for me, honestly. I was just kind of like, they did it. They really did it.
Yeah, I expected it. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I didn't know if they were going to wait till the end of the year, but this is kind of a good time to do it because then you know that you're already working on the next coach for 2 weeks before the end of the season.
That is true. I mean, I looked at some of the coaching candidates that you got on the list. I'm thinking right now, I mean, I could see Urban just kind of coming out of retirement for College Station. I mean, not saying it will, but I'm saying it could happen. You never know. Jonathan Smith is a pretty good candidate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think if they got Lane Kiffin, it'd be more of the same, coming up short in big games.
So why would you feel more confident with Jonathan Smith than Lane Kiffin?
I got a good feeling that Jonathan Smith is better in the big games than Lane Kiffin is at the moment.
Okay. I don't really know what big games Jonathan Smith has coached in myself, but
True. Well, next 2 weeks we'll definitely find out for Oregon State.
yeah, they got something to play for. Absolutely. And I think Jonathan Smith's an excellent coach. So I am in no way discounting him. I'm just pushing back a little bit.
It's all right. Dan Lanning's pretty good. I mean, we've seen Oregon coaches leave. So, I mean, we've seen a Taggart leave for Florida State. We saw Cristobal leaving for Miami. I mean, A&M's got more money for sure.
Oregon fans are going to have a complex if Dan Lanning leaves and they think we are just below that level. That's a destination. We're a stepping stone program. And I know no Oregon fans want to think of themselves as a stepping stone, but that's what they would be if this happens again.
Yeah. You don't want that. But I mean, on the one hand, if I'm Lanning, I'm thinking, I get that Texas money. But if I stay at Oregon, I get that Phil Knight Nike money. That's quite a dilemma right there.
And you're talking about money to work with for the staff and the recruiting. You talked about his own contract.
Oh, all of it. Because it's kind of like, it's pretty good on your resume to have Phil Knight, working for Phil Knight. It's always pretty good to have that on your resume.
Yeah, well, if you're Dan Lanning and you're going to, a college football playoff and your program's moving to the Big Ten,
True.
I don't know that he needs anything else on his resume to get whatever job that he would want past this.
That is true. Question is, we don't know what's going to happen yet. I don't think Brom is going to leave Louisville after his first year. I think he's happy with his alma mater at the moment. Leipold, he says that he wants to stay at Kansas, but that's kind of a wait and see moment right there. Because, I mean, let's be honest. Some of the coaches that say, oh, I love this place. I love this place. They're saying the right thing right now. But they may be thinking a whole nother thing. I mean, case in point, we saw that with Lincoln Riley in 2021 when he was like, I'm not leaving for the SEC. Key words were, he wasn't leaving for the SEC. He never said he was staying at Oklahoma.
Well, sure. No coach has ever admitted to looking for another job or that they were talking to other people if they still have a job somewhere, if they're still employed.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I know that Leipold says he's building a legacy at Kansas, but we're definitely going to find out and see if those words are true in the coming weeks.
Yeah, because there typically are anywhere from 8 to 12 job openings.
Yeah. I mean, Texas A&M, I mean, it's a lot of money, a lot of bees and honey in College Station. Although I don't know with Mike Elko, I don't know if they're going to want the same old, but at the same time, Elko has done pretty fantastic at Duke so far. I mean, the fact that he was able to beat Clemson in his second year by 3 touchdowns, that was pretty big.
Yeah, I really think that any of those guys would do a tremendous job. And again, I've got an order necessarily, but Mike Elko is a tremendous coach. And I don't know if Elko, Leipold, Smith, a few of those guys, Brom, are the type coach that they're looking for in terms of making a big splash with recruits and being able to please their own boosters and supporters.
Yeah. That is going to be a good one to figure out. I mean, I just didn't think Black Sunday was going to be coming today for A&M, but then again, we knew it was coming, just didn't know when. I mean, we know Black Sunday came for Boise State a little while ago. It's like, wow, they got real tired of Avalos real quick.
Yes, they did.
I think they must have seen some clips of The Voice of College Football where some people were like, you can't be giving up 3 touchdowns against Colorado State. You can't do that, especially in the final 4 minutes.
For sure.
I mean, because I remember I told John one time that I think that the University of Michigan got the idea of the musical chairs from John D'Animo from here at the Voice College Football. I think you got some Voice College Football fans, University of Michigan.
Well, we definitely have some Michigan fans around. No doubt about that. All right, Jackson, anything else?
That's about all. Just want to give my take on this Jimbo Fisher firing.
Well, we appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, man, as always. And
thanks, Jackson.
It's always fun breaking the news of college football. It's fun.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Let's take our last call. Will, what's going on?
Mark, Jimbo is gone. He is finished. I thought they might try to get him to fire him with cause, but no, they're going to be coughing up that $75 million.
Yeah, I would think that they would try to negotiate that down.
Yeah.
Like, for example, at Wisconsin, they were able to do that. They've done that other places. Here's $60 million. Now, what's he going to do? Turn that down?
Yeah. Mark, this will get the chat going.
Okay.
And you might laugh at me, but I have to say this. This seems like the perfect situation for Urban Meyer to go into and get back to winning college football.
Oh, well, we've been talking about it.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, I came in a little late.
Urban
But
Meyer.
I feel like this is similar. Like Jimbo did a similar thing to what Ron Zook did at Florida. In terms of like get good players in.
Yeah, collecting
not
talent,
win.
not developing it, not producing. Yeah. I again think it's just astounding that Jimbo Fisher has been there for, this is his sixth season, and he has not produced one NFL draft selection at wide receiver. None.
I can't think of any either.
Yeah, because he's produced none.
Yeah. I mean, Kellen Mond was a decent little college quarterback, but besides that, and A-Chain at running back, but besides that, I mean, they always have good defensive players, but that's not what Jimbo does.
Well, they currently have a couple wide receivers with Evan Stewart. He's going to get drafted. Anais Smith will probably get drafted, but as of right now, none.
Yeah.
And he only had 2 at Florida State, and they were low round selections.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Urban was a wide receiver coach under Lou before he went to Bowling Green, so
yes,
would be another reason why that would be a perfect match. But it'll be interesting to see the A&M Texas rivalry come back next year. That'll be fun. But right now, I think Texas is definitely a bit ahead. But we'll see what happens in that next year.
Well, they're most definitely ahead now that Sark has it going there, and Texas A&M's somewhat starting over. Although somebody can step into that place and should be able to win immediately.
Mm-hmm. Do we know if Petrino is going to be interim or is it someone else? Is it DJ Durkin?
Elijah Robinson is their interim.
Be interesting to see how he does. You know, I was hoping that Jimbo would stay a few more years because the Irish are going to face them next year in a home and home. So that'll be an interesting game next year too. I mean, I feel like both teams are at similar levels.
No, you're going to have to deal with somebody capable.
Yeah. But it'll be a good game. Hopefully, it'll be interesting to see who starts with the Irish. But yeah, I just wanted to chime in with Jimbo. I mean about the Jimbo news. I feel like Urban would be the best option, but I would go probably Elko second choice, but with like a good offensive coordinator.
Have you seen our list here?
Oh, can I see it? Oh, here we go. Lane, I feel like it'd be a sideways step for Lane. I mean, I know he has more money. He'll definitely have more money to work with at A&M, though, than Ole Miss. Lance Leopold. Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of those would be bad choices. But I don't think Brom or Lanning would leave. Leopold, maybe, but it seems like a weird fit. Jonathan Smith would be interesting. I think Jonathan Smith definitely, because didn't he say that he would leave Oregon State if they didn't go into a Power 5?
So he made comments in that direction. And I think if Oregon State, since that is his alma mater and he loves it there, and he's made comments about this where he wants to raise his family, and so he has no thoughts about leaving. Now, obviously, it's going to be a different job in the future. Unless something crazy happens, they're going to be relegated to lower level status. So that could pull him out of Pullman. Or not Pullman, Corvallis.
But do you think Urban could win A&M? Do you think I feel like he could, right? Like a national championship?
He's never not been able to do it elsewhere. So, things do change, and it's been 5 years. And his last experience, as I mentioned to the last caller, his one black mark is that, all the football related stuff is phenomenal. the winning percentage, the national championships, all of that, the big game, the bowl, postseason record, all of that is exceptional. But he's going to be recruiting 17-year-olds. He hasn't coached for 5 years. Not that he's going to have like huge difficulties, but he's going to be in a very competitive environment coaching against the rest of the SEC and directly against Texas. And what do these kids know him for?
I mean, now I think most of them would most of them be old enough to remember the 2014 chip?
It would have been about 7 years old.
All right, some borderline, maybe not. Yeah.
And not that people don't read and can't be told things. I get that. Mac Brown, if Mac Brown doesn't have nearly the coaching record that Urban Meyer has, if he can come back and still be a viable coach, then I'm sure Urban Meyer can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no social media at that time. And Urban Meyer, the fiasco that was Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, it's just, I'm not saying it's a deal breaker. I'm just saying it's to be considered.
Yeah. I think the coach, though, I mean, I just don't think Lanning's leaving Oregon, but he would probably be my second choice overall out of this list. And then I would probably go to Mike Elko.
Why is Dan Lanning not going to leave Oregon?
I mean, he could win a national championship with this year with Oregon. I mean, maybe not. He wouldn't be the favorite, but I think they would have a strong chance. And I just feel like he'd rather stay somewhere where he can win a national championship than restart.
Well, I got to think that he didn't see this coming. If he is offered, if he is in the running, and they do give him a phone call, but things change. There's a lot of guys that when you hear these stories about head coaches that when they've made that kind of move have thought, I was content where I was. I was in the process of thinking about how we're building this out and how we're going to grow this. And all of a sudden I get a phone call and I get convinced that, I don't know where Dan Lanning is from. I don't know if he has any preference in terms of conference and part of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely plays a factor too. Mm-hmm. Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see who they get, Mark. Just wanted to chime in with Urban. Of course, Tony Quack Barber, Oregon fan, believe that's a downgrade for sure. Yeah. I mean, hey, I would say that Notre Dame's a downgrade from LSU.
The current situation is a downgrade, but Texas A&M is really not a downgrade from Oregon.
Yeah.
I'd put them on the same level.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I'm gonna go cook up my lunch.
That sounds good. I should do the same.
Appreciate you taking time to talk.
Of course.
All right.
Okay, Will, have a good one.
You too.
All right, folks, appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. The top 25 that actually makes sense has been delayed today. I wonder why. Okay. Top 25 will be out sometime in the next couple of hours. And, of course, we've got our College Football After Dark show coming up tonight around 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And then we've got the Big Ten Live show. That's Monday at 6 Eastern. And as I mentioned to a number of you last night during the call-in show, I think I'm going to do like a box score series. Meaning that after Saturday's games, and I've kind of thought of this a little late, there's only 2 weeks left in the season, but going into Sunday, so for example, I can only watch 2 or 3 games every window of time. And really, I can only watch 2. That third game isn't getting a whole lot of attention. And so then we arrive. If you're like me, I get to late Saturday night or early Sunday, and I have other obligations outside of college football. But I get to that point and I'm like, wish I would have seen that game. Wish I would have seen that game. What happened here? What happened there? So it might be a bit of an interesting video series to do a Sunday wrap up of various box scores and recaps around college football to see what we can glean from them. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Lock in on everything that we've got going here at the Voice of College Football, in particular an SEC channel and a Big 12 channel. Those links are in the description section of the video. So again, we would draw you to the SEC and the Big 12 channels. Check them out right here at the Voice of College Football, and we will see you with the College Football After Dark show later tonight.